Hello everyone, and this is the most shameful story in my life so far. I think it would be close to lots of girls, as it's telling about my first period. I am laughing a lot remembering it now, but at the time I was absolutely sure that my life was over. Please don't laugh at me. I come from a very religious family, and my parents are never keen on talking about physiological or affective matters. My mom loves me a lot, but I think she was terrified that at some point she would need to talk about periods and sex. I guess she has goosebumps even pronouncing the word, and all things like that. I arrived to my 11 years old, being super sure children come from nowhere and just materialize in women's bellies. All in all, I didn't even bother thinking about puberty or my changing body. One morning when I woke up and went to the bathroom, I saw some strange brown stains down there. I had no idea what that could be and got scared. My first thought was that I needed to ask for help from my parents. But the idea of coming out of the bathroom, going to my mom and trying to explain what has happened to me, including naming my intimate parts, was absolutely painful. Asking for dad's help wasn't even an option. I had no siblings to consult, so even being really scared, I decided to wait, and maybe it would pass on its own. I went to school but really couldn't concentrate on studies. I was just listening to my body and trying to understand how grave my condition was. It didn't occur to me to ask the advice of my classmates. It was still too shameful to mention where the stains were coming from. A couple of times I went to the toilet and saw some new brown stains. I didn't feel bad though, so I thought I could wait for some time before panicking. In the evening came the pain, that awful dull nagging pain that any girl knows. Now I knew it was time to panic. I opened the internet bravely and searched for stomach pain with blood. At 11, I wasn't very strong at anatomy and was sure that stomach was wherever in the belly. You understand that an ulcer was the most optimistic option I got. Okay, now I knew I was going to die, but asking for help still seemed too shameful. I decided to sleep it over, but obviously, during the night, I didn't get any sleep. I went to school all nervous and panicky because that morning I had checked and I still got new brown stains on my underwear. My condition didn't get worse though, and I got distracted by my classes after all. Until at math class, I felt something wet and ran to the bathroom. I found Niagara Falls of flaming red blood. I nearly fainted. My hands trembled and I was sobbing hysterically. What I did was run to our nurse's office and claim that I am bleeding. I have an ulcer and I'm going to die. At that point, I was not ashamed to share my problem anymore. At first, the nurse got really scared. But then, as she asked me in detail what bothered me, she was visibly relieved. I don't want to disappoint you, but I'm afraid you are not going to die. You are just having your first period. A what? A period. Don't you know what a period is? She was pretty surprised by my ignorance, but explained patiently what it was and how to deal with it, and also gave me some pads for a start and explained how to use them. Obviously, the news I am not going to die made me totally happy. But as I was going to leave her, she asked me if I could ask my mom to visit her for a talk, in a private way. After giving my mom news about my first period and seeing her somehow embarrassed, I passed her the message from our nurse. I had no idea what they were talking about and was just enjoying my newly regained healthy life. Only in several years as my mother was telling me about my sexual life, visibly feeling uneasy about that, she confessed that our nurse told her that making talks on physiology is crucial for teens and that she insisted my mom would overcome herself and find the way to explain some important things to me. I am thankful to our nurse, as now I understand that there is nothing shameful about our body. And if we have some questions we need to ask, not keep them to ourselves. And also, it is always better if parents answer our questions than any other person who doesn't know us as well as they do.
Hello, and sometimes I remind myself of the Incredible Hulk, only it's not as cool as it sounds. Before, I was a little boy who always laughed, smiled, and made everyone around me happy. And then, bam! I am a teenager who always wanted to sleep, tries to hide his acne, and most importantly, is constantly struggling with controlling his anger. And I'm really not exaggerating. My anger issues got the better of me, so often that I was seeing a principal at school almost every week. How does it happen? Well, at first I get frustrated at something, like my situation at home, my grades, or even the fact that my pen broke. With each new event, the frustration grows like some kind of evil monster inside me. Next thing, my eyesight gets blurry and kind of white, and I'm either shouting at someone or throwing something. Although it didn't happen often, my classmates were often eagerly waiting for the show to start. It was funny to them when I started shouting at a teacher in anger. I guess it would be funny to me too, but I couldn't laugh while it was happening. I was walking on thin ice in school because teachers were fed up with me, and I really tried to be on my best behavior because otherwise I would be expelled. So I was staying calm. A car flushed me with water? That's okay, just breathe. It'll be all right. I got a bad grade despite studying the whole night. No problem, it happens to everyone. People walk slowly in a narrow corridor, and I have to be fast to be in time for class. It's all right. But it wasn't all right. Each time I held anger inside me, the monster just grew bigger and, well, angrier. And in the end, something very bad happened. During one lesson, a teacher started to lecture me about being a bad student and how I should spend more time studying instead of playing video games. I held all the anger inside me, like all the previous times, but she continued. It went on, and then I snapped. As before, my vision blurred. And in absolute rage, I took a chair and threw it at the window. It went right through and fell down outside. That's it, I thought. My life was over. Next few hours were full of stress and scandals. Principal talked to me, teacher talked to me, my parents talked to me, and they decided that if something like this happened again, I would be expelled. I had to do something with my anger. I was ashamed of myself, and rightfully so. The principal said that if I'm so full of energy, I should put it somewhere where it belongs. She was right. In the next month, I tried several things. I read articles on the internet and books about anger management. I meditated, but nothing worked. It all changed when my dad told me that maybe I should try exercising, or something like that. Maybe it would help with my anger. I decided to try going to a gym. I went 3 times a week, putting all my energy into it, and coming home completely exhausted. For the first few weeks, everything hurt, and I only wanted to eat and sleep. But also, my anger subsided. Annoying stuff still kept happening, but it was much easier to remain calm, to talk with my classmates and teachers. If I felt angry, I informed my teachers that I needed some time, and they would let me out for a few minutes. But flashes of anger weren't happening as often as before. And even if they did, I always knew that in the evening, I would go to a gym and put my frustrations in something useful, productive. I can't say I'm the calmest person ever now, but I'm much better. I hope that in the future, after years of exercising, I will look like Hulk, not act like him.
Hi everyone! I have a super enraging story here. Thing is, I'm going to tell you about my parents being a bit traditionalist about upbringing girls, and me having a hard battle against it. So, if you want to hear about inequality and unfairness, this is my story. I lived together with my parents and my older brother. He is just a couple of years older than me, and now we are both teenagers. My parents are very nice towards both of us, but this niceness is not the same towards me and towards him. Both my parents are more about a traditional approach towards family values. A man is the head of the family, the breadwinner, and a woman is obeying him. It is not as horrible as it sounds. I respect the choice of my parents. Unfortunately, it becomes a big problem when it comes to raising children. Don't think that Ed and me hate each other. He is a very good, caring brother, and I love him a lot. But I also envy him a great deal. Point is, since my early childhood, my parents have always been strict towards me. I was supposed to have a well-scheduled day, diligent studies, domestic chores, a couple of hours out with some approved girl-playing dolls under my parents' supervision. And home, not later than 7 p.m. It all sounds okay until you actually got to do whatever he liked with whoever he liked at any time of the day. I actually couldn't understand what's the drastic difference. Okay, he is a boy and is a couple of years older, but we basically had the same needs. To relax, to chill, sometimes to disobey. However, life wasn't that simple. Take housework, for example. He could have a rest whenever he liked. I was supposed to do domestic chores every day, even if I was tired or not in the mood. When ate something, Mom called me to wash his dishes. Excuse me, why can't he do it? These are his dishes. My mom responded, He is a man and doesn't need to do anything at home. It's our female duty. What? I heard that we had social equality and didn't actually object to washing his dishes on his own, but Mom insisted. What should I do? There were, of course, many other cases when I had a proof of different understanding of what boys and girls could and couldn't do. Well, he lived a normal life of a teenager without any limitations. He could come home whenever he wanted, and Dad just asked how the evening had been. I could have only female friends, approved by my mom personally. And believe me, she approved only the most boring girls. I was once 5 minutes late, and when I came home, Mom grounded me for a couple of days because you need to obey. Okay, I couldn't help but ask what the reason was for that difference. And Mom explained me her vision of the world. Boys leave the parents very early and live their lives. A girl, on the other hand, normally helps her parents and takes care of her own family when she gets married. So she needs to be disciplined and to know how to do anything about the house. It seemed that my mom was talking somewhere from the 18th century. I was trying to ask questions like, why can't men and women divide house chores? Or why can't a woman relax and come home at 10 p.m. instead of 8? What's the difference? But Mom was talking discipline, obedience, and decency. That, to be honest, didn't seem the most thrilling things in the world. That is why I grew up with a very strong sense of justice and equality. I don't want to complain too much about my parents. They are very affectionate towards me, and I can trust them thoroughly. However, the thing I know best is that for me, it is crucial not to support the same values they have passed me, even if it is sad to say things like that. When I was growing older, I felt in the cage that didn't grow together with me. That is why at some point I decided to push the boundaries. But I didn't want to oppose my parents directly. They are good, caring parents and don't deserve a rebellion. I had a different idea. As a junior in high school, I decided that I would study a lot and get involved into a lot of extracurricular activities dealing with human rights and social integration. Why? Because I felt that my ambition in life would be to enter into law school and become a civil and human rights advocate. I have seen myself how limiting stereotypes may be for a person and wanted to apply my own experience in my future life. My parents had a different idea. They thought I would go to some college in our town and then become a teacher of some humanities subject. They felt it was the right thing to do for a girl who wants to make a calm and happy life. Oh, you should have seen their faces when I informed them that I am going to apply for a university in a big city, and if everything goes right, I will leave them and study something absolutely non-feminine in their understanding. It was a tragedy for them. But what should I have done? I have grown up an ambitious young woman. If I had had a different character, I would probably become a submissive and obedient daughter, but I am not ready to give up my principles because my parents see it differently. It has been a heavy blow for my parents. They didn't think I could be that determined to achieve my goal. I am now doing lots of volunteering in social centers, and I see that they disapprove. But my brother is the family member who gives me a huge support, and I thank him for that. However, I think my parents will see after all that they can be proud of me for my determination, and in some way, it is to their merit that I have grown to be the person I am now.
Hello, I want to tell you a Tinder story from a couple of years ago. I was in search of true love, and in a way I found it. But I was brutally catfished. This is what happened. I didn't manage to find a girlfriend. I think I was just unlucky. I'm good looking and not boring, but as it often happens, I didn't like girls interested in me, and girls I liked paid me no attention. Life is a pain. But I remained positive. If you can't do it in real life, welcome to the wonderful world of dating apps. It was fun. I matched with several girls at once and started chatting. Well, nothing really engaging, but it's a start at least. A couple of days swiping left and right, and I connect to a breathtaking beauty from my city. And she was my age. We started chatting, and she definitely knew how to interest a guy. Our conversation was different from all the other talks I made with random girls. Sometimes they seemed really shallow, and most of the talks didn't differ from one another. Not only was she beautiful, but also witty. We were just texting for a couple of weeks, and I was already in love. I was checking my phone all the time to see if a message from her had arrived. This was a clear sign that time had come for the next step. The next step would be talking on the phone. I asked her for her private number, and she gave it to me. We had a very inspiring talk. She sounded genuinely interested and nice to me. Her voice was so profound and tender and sounded strangely adult. However, it was okay for a girl who seemed so mature, even if she was a teenager like me. I called her from time to time and she always responded, and we made our cute chats. I was telling her more and more about myself, some really personal stuff, and she always encouraged me to tell her more. Cool, a person who is genuinely interested in me, I thought. At some point, I proposed to her a date. I was not sure how she would take it, but she agreed at once. I was already imagining myself dating that gorgeous girl. But when the day of our first date came, she told me she couldn't come because she had fallen ill. Okay, stuff happens, I'll have to wait. We scheduled another date for the following week. The day before, she confirms that she will definitely come. Hooray! But an hour before the date, she writes, apologizing and saying that she has to accompany her mother to the doctor urgently. That's bad luck, really. She assured me that next time she would come 100%. Well, you can imagine that next time she dumped me for another reason. I was getting irritated, but she seemed so sincere in her apologies that I bit my tongue. However, she did it again until one day she informed me that she was in the hospital with a serious illness, as she put it, and we needed to postpone our appointments. But she was still eager to know more about me and begged me not to give up on her. Of course, I asked her if I could visit her at the hospital or at least say what hospital it was, but she refused, saying that she wouldn't want anyone to see her in the horrible condition she was in. She didn't say what was wrong with her though, she just implied it was something grave and dangerous. Of course, I was worried a lot and decided to help her somehow. I was sure if I managed to find her, she wouldn't push me away. I thought it was kind of romantic. So I switched my Sherlock mode on and decided to find out who she was. One of her pics on the dating site showed her in front of a high school, and I thought that she probably studied there. I decided that the easiest way was going there and asking around if any of the students knew her. There, I could get more info about her condition and where to find her. So one day, I left the classes a bit earlier and went to that high school. And now imagine the scene. I am arriving to that school. There's a break. And whom do I see at once? I'm running up to her, mumbling something about a hospital and an illness, and she stops me with a, "Sorry, you must be mistaken." I'm showing her the pictures on my phone, and she admits those are her pictures, and she has never used dating apps. Good Lord, I've been catfished! I was gazing at her with a lost expression, and she was asking for details on where I got those pictures from and who the person I was talking to was. I had no idea. My heart was broken. I was red with shame, and I just wanted to come home and delete all the conversations I made. There was lots of personal stuff in there. But was very sympathetic towards me and proposed to have a coffee and discuss the matter. Turned out, it was not less interesting, but so much better, because she was real and single. After a couple of dates, we found out that we actually liked each other, and imagine that, we are dating till now. I have never found out who that person was, and I've never understood what that catfishing was for. I remember that the day I made a selfie together with her and sent it. She blocked her account immediately, and I've never heard a single word from her ever since. My story finished well, but my message to you guys is never trust anyone on the web, and don't tell personal things to people you don't know. Sounds obvious, but you never know when you get hooked.
Hello, I'm 17 now, and a year ago, my father tried to force me into dating one boy. How something like this could happen in the 21st century? Listen to my story and find out. My father is a businessman, and he usually spends most of his time doing his job or thinking about it. He wasn't a bad father, just a busy one. At least, he was passionate about his job, and allowed us to live comfortably, and to have everything we needed or wanted. My father is quite old school in his views on family roles, so my mother was a classic housewife, keeping our house in order and making food. She didn't really need to do that because we are always able to afford hiring help, but my mother insisted. And father was happy with that because everything was, like he used to say, as it should be. Don't get me wrong, I was extremely grateful to him and understood that we wouldn't be able to live like that without him. So of course, I would try to give something back, like helping my mother. And also, I wanted to become successful without his help, like being a good student, and not just be a lazy person who lives off her parents' money. My father had a friend who was in the same line of business as he was, and while they weren't openly competing, it was understandable that there was an unspoken rivalry between them. My father didn't like that and wanted to somehow unite both businesses. But it proved to be a difficult task because his friend didn't really want that. So my father had a genius idea. If I would have married his friend's son, then all of us would have become one big family. All of it sounded insane, especially how my father thought that I could become a businesswoman myself because I was a girl. Fortunately, we don't live in medieval times, and he couldn't openly force me to start dating. Instead, he would constantly talk. He was an athlete, straight-A student with good sense of humor. He would be a perfect boyfriend for you, honey. Real smooth, Dad. Every time Father's friend would visit us, and Father would try to find similarities between us. You like this TV show? And I would say something like, it's alright, I guess. And my father would look at me with disappointment. It was extremely awkward. He was a great guy, but I wasn't interested in him. And he wasn't interested in me. In a way, we understood each other because we both didn't like each other much. After he tried to bring us together a few times and failed, I thought he would calm down, but no! He was a businessman, and he didn't like to accept failures, so he started to talk about this with Mom, so she would try to persuade me that this was a good idea. I tried to explain to them that it doesn't work like that. It's not only me who didn't want to date. He wasn't too keen on the idea, too. I don't even know what his father thought about all of it, and whether he noticed it at all. During the summer, my dad had planned his final plan. He bought us all tickets to a prestigious resort. And then he was like, "Oh, a lot of work turned up recently, but we can't waste a ticket." He probably thought that a resort would create a romantic situation for us, and we would suddenly fall in love, like in romantic comedies. I was fed up with it. He said he doesn't even want to go to this resort, and he recently found a girlfriend, so all of it was just weird. All this sounds very bizarre, even insane, right? My father was always a bit eccentric, but this was just crazy. That if I'm bothered by it, he could talk with his father and tell him what was happening. I wasn't sure I wanted to ruin my father's friendship that could lead into partnership, so I said no. Let's not do that just yet. Instead, I told my father that I didn't want to go to a resort, and that I had better spend my summer working. I explained to him that I want to become successful, and I was ready to work for it. I wanted to prove to him that he didn't need this partnership to make his business more successful, because I would work hard to help him myself in the future, and working would be a first step for it. My father was furious, saying how I tried to ruin everything, and how it would make us richer than ever. I gave up on trying to persuade my father, so I told, "I'm not a tool for your business. I'm a person." Of course my father didn't want to listen, so for the next few weeks, both of my parents almost didn't talk to me, like I had something bad and were waiting for my apology. They stopped buying me things, but I didn't care because I didn't even ask for them. And he even stopped cooking for me, saying, "Food is in the fridge, make something for yourself." They went to a resort and I started working. I don't care if my parents will continue to act that way. If I will need to work while studying in a university, I will do it. It's better to live by your own rules and have a hard life instead of being someone's tool with money.
Hi. And my story didn't have a happy ending. Yet. I still hope things will work out. I met my boyfriend when we were both just 14. We took piano lessons with the same teacher, so we'd meet at her house several times a month when his class was finishing and mine was about to start. We didn't even get to know each other's names for the first 2 months. But then we had a small talk 1 or 2 times, started texting each other, and quite soon I realized that I was in love. I felt he really liked me too, so we started dating and talking on the phone day and night. And I guess both realized that we were made for each other. I mean, I know a lot of teenagers say that after 2 weeks together, but that obviously was not the case. It turned out he liked the same music, same books, same movies, but the main thing was that we understood each other really well. After a couple of weeks of our relationship, we didn't even have to speak to understand what the other one feels. I was really sure I found my soulmate, and I still am. Months passed and we spent more and more time together. Birthday is in March, mine is in April. The dates being really close, so we turned 15 together. Then we both turned 16. And I mean, love did not diminish. It still gets stronger and stronger every day. So about 3 months ago, proposed to me. First, I was shocked because even though I knew we'd be together for a long, long time, I never expected that. But I said yes. I knew I wanted a family with him. I just didn't think it would be that soon. But okay, we're both 16, and we're not allowed to get married by law. So that was the first thing I asked, still in tears of happiness. He said now that we were engaged, we'd just wait for 1.5 years.
prepare everything, and get married the day I turn 18. It sounded so beautiful. So now I'm getting closer to the problem. My parents were always totally fine with our relationship. My mom and dad loved, and they were always happy to see him in our house. The same thing was with his parents. They're both artists, and I think they are amazing people. And it seems they liked me from the very beginning, and said they were all for his decision to make a proposal. But, I was a bit scared to tell it all to my parents. It took me several days to be ready to talk to my mom about this. Because, I had no idea how she would react. My mom was quite surprised, of course, but she wasn't negative. At first, she thought we wanted to get married now, but then I explained her the plan. I think in the end, she was quite happy to hear all of this. My mom is not willing to show her emotions often, so I can't imagine her jumping around the room screaming with joy. But she was quite positive, and she started talking about responsibility, and that I have to be sure about my feelings. And at that moment, I didn't like her being so rational, but now understand that these were just things mothers say. Now I'm sure my mom understands and supports me. After all, she was only 20 when she married my dad, and my dad was 21. But we both know he might have a hard time with this news. My mom suggested she talk to him about this, to get him ready, I said that it was my decision, and that I should talk to Dad myself. For the next week, I was too scared to start this conversation. Meanwhile, Dad and I were already thinking about our guests, about the place and the ceremony, the dress. I know we have a lot of time, but we want everything to be unforgettable. So one day, we were having dinner with Mom and Dad, when I finally decided to speak. I tried to be loud and confident as I said, "Dad and I want to get married." And then, after a long pause, my dad just laughed. He thought it was a joke. He laughed for a while, but then he looked at Mom and realized everything was for real. He was silent for about 10 seconds, but then he just exploded. I don't really want to get back to it, but in short, his point was that I first had to graduate college, which is at least 4 years more, and over time, we would see what kind of was. I mean, I thought they got on really well, but obviously that was just an illusion. And even after college, he shouted, it would still be too early. I felt so bad, I started crying. My mom tried to calm him down, but nothing helped. And then I said, "But you two got married when you were very young." Dad got confused for a moment, but then said gravely, "The times were different." I still have no idea what he meant. Every time I mention this topic again, Dad gets furious. Mom tried to talk to him in private a couple of times, but that didn't help either. I mean, Mom says he just needs time, but I can't even imagine him changing his mind in a year and a half. Maybe it would have been easier for me if I understood his reasons to say no. But he doesn't even want to explain, except for it's too early and the times were different. One day, came to our house to talk to him. He didn't even tell me he was going to do this. I got mad at him when I found out, but in fact, I think it was really brave of him. So my dad was way more polite with him than he was with me, but he still said no. And my family's really important to me, so I won't run away or cut all the ties with my dad. Now, I just hope things will get better somehow. Meanwhile, keep planning our wedding. If you have any advice for me, please leave it in the comments. I believe love always wins, so everything's gonna be fine someday.